Hi there, thanks again for tuning into this YouTube channel where I talk about my past sketchbooks over the years. The one I'll be discussing today is sketchbook number 5. So this covers May 2018 to December 2018. And really it's the first part of my Italian trip, my sort of grand tour if you like, which covers Palermo, Naples and Rome, and also a little bit of Valletta as well in Malta. So enjoy, thanks again. Sketchbook number 5. So this one is really covering quite a lot of Italy, and as I said in the introduction, it's one of my favourite countries, and for quite a few years I was desperate to get over there to see so many great cities and the architecture and everything that goes with it really. So what I decided to do was, because there were quite a few cities that I wanted to see in Italy, I decided to split it so that I would visit 3 venues in one particular year and then another 3 the following year. So Sketchbook 5 really deals with Palermo in Sicily and then sort of jumping up to Naples and Rome. So you'll see the sketches as we go through. There's a couple of sketches beforehand of London where I used to live. This is Temple Arch, I think. So really by this stage now, Sketchbook 5, we're sort of deep into Posca pens. The fine 0.7 nib is really the one that I've started to use most often. And I think it's the thinnest nib that you can get. And they're not without their restrictions. I mean, sometimes in cold weather, you have to really kind of give them a good shake to get them to work. And actually sometimes in warm weather, so they can be a little bit unpredictable, but 90% of the time they are a great pen to use. And I've had so many lovely comments on my Insta feed over the years asking what pens they are. I don't think they're sort of widely known, but I think they're more for sort of graffiti artists, the thicker pens, the really sort of chunky ones. But the thinner ones don't really get the credit they deserved, I guess. So anyway, the first couple of sketches, as I said, in London. This is St Pancras International Station, a statue of Sir John Betjeman, who was a really great poet, who really championed great architecture, not just in London, but all over the UK. And there was a petition to actually stop the demolition of this fantastic station. And eventually they sort of came round and they saved this great sort of architectural building from being demolished. And he did that with quite a few buildings as well. So he was very influential. He was a great poet, but he was also into the arts and really tried his best to save so many great works of architecture in London. So they had a statue which was erected a few years ago, so I thought it was quite nice to do a sketch of that. This is Fitzrovia Chapel. So this is in Fitzrovia. It's sort of attached to Middlesex Hospital, or what is left of Middlesex Hospital. And it was built by John Loughborough Pearson, if I'm correct with that, in the late 1800s. And then it was completed by his son John in the late 20s. So it was fully restored about 2017, and they use it now for all kinds. It's a great venue for weddings and things like that. But if you go through my Instagram feed, and there's a few other photos of me sort of in situ. Somebody that worked there was very kind to take photos of me as I was sketching this. And it's a beautiful little chapel. It's not very big at all. So really by this point, as I said in previous videos, but I'm really, by sort of Sketchbook 5, I'm getting into doing my research in my home city in London. You know, things that are different, things that aren't just the norm, you know, they're not just your usual sort of Houses of Parliament, etc. I really wanted to challenge myself to find different places within London, within the city. I love those little parts of the city that are very unknown, especially to tourists. And this is a great example. Bunhill Fields Burial Ground. It's a bit of a tongue twister. It's where William Blake, the famous poet, is an artist, is buried. So John Bunyan wrote Pilgrim's Progress. Yeah, so it's a really nice couple of hours, just you know, in an afternoon, just to spend. Other people, you know, workers around the city having a lunch hour, just to sketch something just a little bit different, really. So I'm really getting into, with these pens, trying to get something down on the page that's very accurate, but also using Instagram as a tool to actually educate as well. Again, it's not just the usual landscapes that you see from London. They're very much slightly different takes on such a huge city, trying to display, you know, the fact that there's so much to a city of this size, so much history. This I don't think I posted this one. This was just at the top of, it's almost like a really futuristic looking shopping centre that's opposite St Paul's Cathedral, but it offers some really great views. For some reason I wasn't happy with it. Liberty of London. So sometimes I'm just zooming in and concentrating on a certain part. If you've ever been to Liberty of London, it's such a huge department store. Been there for so many years, very iconic. But I knew I couldn't, or didn't really, had no interest in trying to capture all of it. I would have been there all day. So just to concentrate on a certain part. So this was Valletta in Malta, again with my friend Dave, for a long weekend. And I absolutely loved it. I'm dying to go back, actually. It's such a beautiful island. Such great history as well. It's been invaded by so many people over the years, but so I just decided to take the sketchbook obviously with me on that particular occasion. I think I only did 3 over the weekend. This one wasn't particularly successful. This is looking out onto the sea and the island as it sort of curves round. A statue there. But the architecture is fantastic. You have these kind of effigies and these statues on every corner. I guess they sort of symbolise something for different districts. This is back at the V&A. I think I've said before, sometimes I kind of flick through pages. I paint pages up and then don't often sort of get to them until a couple of months later, until an appropriate sketch comes along. Busts and heads as well, again from the V&A. So I'm really getting into this sort of fun aspect of trying to capture different things and making a fun little kind of GIF or little video of it to post on Instagram. But this was a really strong memory, a really nice memory of Valletta, just around the corner from the Airbnb apartment where we stayed early one morning. And it's looking up towards the church, a typical street. And I was halfway through this sketch and a guy, an English guy in his early 70s walked past, and he was an artist himself. And he moved over in the mid-90s with his wife, and he had an artist studio just up this road. So when I finished the sketch, I wandered up to find him, and we had a lovely chat. And we got each other's numbers and email addresses, and he commissioned me to do a couple of drawings. So we struck up a really nice friendship just by that chance meeting. So I love moments like that, and that's one of my favourites from this book. I must admit, this was just the angle, the viewpoint, the composition, and it's a very simple one as I said in the previous sketchbook for the San Francisco trip. I think it's even actually the same colour pens, the dark purple and the light blue. This is back in London, Chinatown. Again, just really interesting viewpoints. So you can take somewhere that's very well known in London, like Chinatown, but you're looking at it from a different angle, quite literally. Just down an alleyway there. Parts of London that are ever changing. On the corner of Manette Street on Charing Cross Road. So this was Foyle's bookshop. Foyle's is still there, but it's kind of moved next door that way to the old-fashioned College of St Martin's, what used to be. And I thought I'd capture this because I actually used to work here before I gave it up and became a professional illustrator. So it's just capturing these little moments. So this kind of goes back and forth with the Italian trip. And again, as I explained before, I'm sort of painting things up before I leave the house. So obviously before I get on the plane to go over, just to sort of prepare myself and whatever's appropriate. So I'm kind of going back and forth with this. But this is Palermo. This is Oratory of Santa Sita. And this was like a Baroque style Roman Catholic parish church. And I was put onto this by, there's an art critic and historian called Andrew Graham Dixon. And he has a lot of documentaries on BBC4. And he had a trip to Palermo and he discovered this place. So I obviously made a note of it because I was going quite shortly to Palermo in Sicily and made sure that I made a visit there as well. And it's just an amazing place. I have a postcard here of it. And you can see the amazing detail. And so I just sat on one of the benches that are sort of below this photograph here and just looked upwards to capture this. And it took quite a while, and it was quite an odd angle. I was basically just looking up at these figures, and this is just a fraction of what was there. It was absolutely incredible. And it's a very small place as well, but I must have been there for a couple of hours. Such a beautiful place, tucked away in the back streets. Just the kind of place that I love to visit. And not very busy either, not very touristy, which really surprised me. Well, this is a sketch that didn't quite work out because there's too much going on. I really wanted to capture beyond these railings of this old church that was faded and kind of falling to bits, really. But as I've said in previous videos as well, some sketches work, some don't. This was back in the British Museum, just trying out different sort of blocks of colour. Sculpture of a lion as you walk up the stairs towards the upper section of British Museum. This was my balcony actually in Palermo. So I was here for about 4 days. So this one sort of on and off, I kept coming back to it. But I was really pleased with it, with the sort of edge of the balcony there and the lamp. And then what sort of lies beyond. This was the street that sort of carried on up to the centre. So this one was the catacombs, the Palermo catacombs. And I got told off actually because you're not meant to take photos down there. It's a very sacred place, but I mean, everyone does. It has its own Instagram account. So people are obviously taking videos and taking photos. So whoever was shouting at me through the PA system wasn't doing a particularly good job because they have their own Instagram account, thousands of followers. But I did the drawing, which was fair enough, and they left me alone for that. But once I took a photo in situ, as I often do with my Instagram posts, this voice came from nowhere. But I captured it, and it was a nice afternoon. Kefaloon, just a day visit on the train from Palermo, takes about 45 minutes, an hour. I really wanted to capture these sort of beach huts and these houses that sort of go up the mountains. That's a wonderful part of Sicily. Palermo Cathedral. Real intense colour for this one. I'm still undecided whether I like it or not. I think this orange is a little bit too deep, so the foreground bits and pieces don't really stand a chance. But this was the very first sketch when I arrived in Palermo. So I was just kind of adjusting myself to the environment, to everything really. This is the British Museum back in London. Just a collection of figures. Really just a page filler, but it was a nice enough hour or so. So we've moved on to Naples by this point. So this is Gesso Nuovo, if I've pronounced that correctly, probably not. So this is a church in the very central part of Naples, and I was staying just around the corner, again for about 4 days. And I really wanted to capture this architecture. It's very unusual for an old church to have architecture in this kind of style. And if you look at it from a side angle, the brickwork here just kind of points out. It's just an amazing sight when you first see it, when you walk around the corner. So this was the very first sketch when I arrived in Naples in the afternoon. And through my research as well, I knew I wanted to capture this, so I just sat opposite. And it probably took me about an hour or so. It was very repetitive, but it was really fun to do, and just to capture this doorway as well. I think the local police that were stationed there just wondered what the hell I was doing, but there we go. Sometimes you have to do these things. This was just around the corner. This was very interesting from my apartment, and I walk past this every day. There was a little grocery store on the corner, and I'd get a couple of things for breakfast in the morning, fresh fruit and things like that, and things for lunch. And it was just a marble sculpture, and I did a little bit of homework on it, and it's the statue of God Nile, and it dates back to the Roman times. So I have a lovely sort of short video of me after I'd finished the sketch, just kind of panning around, because if you've ever been to Naples, these little alleyways, tight little alleyways with restaurants and bars and things, they're so tiny. And in the heat of the summer, in the middle of the summer, when you have so many tourists, so I really had to stand back in a little archway to capture this. But it was a fantastic couple of hours. And the shopkeeper next door kept coming out and sort of gazing over my shoulder as well, and we got chatting afterwards. So this was a day trip to Pompeii. The heat was really intense, so I only did a couple of sketches. The one that I wasn't particularly happy with, I think this one here, because it sort of captured the alleyway sort of walking up this way, and Vesuvius, I think this is, isn't it, in the background. Wasn't particularly happy with the composition. Doesn't really say much, but I posted it later on once I arrived home. But this one I was more happy with, just because of the nature of the composition. And I think I chatted in previous videos about Sketchbook 4 about having a point of interest in a random place, and then the rest of it is just left blank. And I think the colour combination here was quite successful, with the sort of peachy yellowy colour of the sky with the blue of the statue there, and the crumbling ruins there, and the mountain. So we have quite a few important elements captured in there. This is Castel Sant'Elmo. So it's probably about an hour and a half walking to the very top, and there's a church right at the top, and they're actually doing some structural work, so that's the reason why all this scaffolding there at the time. But I just wanted to capture that as well, again through research before I flew over. So that was a lovely afternoon. So this was probably one of my favourite sketches from this book and from the trip actually. This is still in Naples, and it's the Cappella Sansevero Museum. And again, it's down a really tight alleyway in central Naples. And there's strictly no photos taken within the museum. So I paid for the ticket, wandered in, did this sketch, and was very happy with it. And the people that were working there were sort of walking past and noticing what I was doing, and they left me to it. And I had a word with them afterwards just to see if I could sneak a photo of it in situ, but to no avail. And that's fine. I just went outside and took a photo afterwards. But again, I've got some postcards of the actual marble statue itself. Just incredible work. And this is by Antonio Corradini. And this was the actual museum itself. So I was kind of stood just kind of in this spot here. Just kind of getting in people's way, as I like to do in these museums. So that was a lovely afternoon, and I was very pleased with that. St. Angelo Bridge. Very iconic part of Rome. And again, people walking past, so many tourists, lovely comments. Such a great way to spend a couple of hours just in one spot and capturing just that moment in time. This is another favourite of mine, Piazza Navona Square. Just one of my favourite parts of Rome, and trying to capture this this fountain, this water fountain by Lorenzo Bernini. So he was really the sort of master of Baroque sculpture, if you like, and he did lots of things in St. Peter's Basilica, and he was a fantastic painter as well, all-round artist and sculptor. So I was desperate to capture just a section of, again, as I've said before, just kind of zooming in on a particular part, because trying to capture the whole thing would have taken the whole afternoon, and I wasn't particularly interested in doing that. But just to kind of zoom in on a particular part of this sculpture, that's what interested me the most. And trying to get a couple of figures right with the background as well. Going really full out colour with this one. This is Palatine Hill. Again, just capturing the ruins within central Rome. I could have stayed there for 3 or 4 months, and there's on every corner there's something to sketch. Such a beautiful city. This one, there's a bit of a story attached to this. So somebody contacted me, a good friend of mine that I hadn't seen for a while, and it turns out that she was a teacher or the sort of head of illustration at Falmouth University in Cornwall, the MA online course. And she'd seen my work, she'd seen my Instagram posts, and she actually wanted me to be part of that course, the MA online course. So what they actually did, which I thought was fantastic, was they had a film department out there that actually met me on my last day in Rome, and they filmed me putting this sketch together, and I was talking to camera, giving tips and advice about urban sketching, and they put it together. I think it was quite a short film, 5-minute film, and they used it as a teaching aid for people that wanted to that wanted to study illustration at MA level in Falmouth. So unfortunately I can't show that film to you because it's part of their teaching aid, so I'm not allowed. But it turned out really well, and it was a full day, and I picked this particular spot because it was quite quiet and it was early in the morning, and we had a couple of hours of setting up the cameras and then talking into camera, giving tips and advice, as I say. But it was, and this was the last day in Rome, so I had a well-earned beer after this, and it was probably the hottest day that I was there as well. So it was very exciting actually, and it was something that I hadn't done before. So this is back in London, Charterhouse Square in Farringdon. Just trying to capture the essence of these fantastic old buildings. And again, talking about little kind of oddities, I suppose, in London. This is Vauxhall Bridge. Little kind of statues attached to the bridge as you go over towards central London. And this is in the basement part of the Royal Academy of Arts. And they were renovating parts of the upstairs at that time, and to walk through the basement, it was a different entrance because certain parts were closed off, normal entrances were closed off. So you had to walk through a different part of the building to get to the sort of normal entrance. And as you pass through, I noticed these some of these sculptures that were just had some plastic covering over them to protect them from all the dust and all the work that was going on around them. So I thought that was quite nice to capture that. The Golden Hind. This is a replica of Francis Drake's ship. And that's just around the corner from Borough Market, near London Bridge. Just capturing the workmen on the scaffolding there, repairing. So that's quite a good, popular attraction for tourists. Piccadilly Circus, Eros. Again, just experimenting with washes of colour. This is the view from Millennium Bridge as you go over towards, obviously, St Paul's Cathedral there, and in the background behind me is Tate Modern. So that's a really nice, I quite like this angle. The viewpoint is very central as you're looking at crowds sort of walking past you, walking down onto the South Bank here, but also walking across here, coming towards you to get to Tate Modern and onto the south side. So this was Temple Church, and this was I think the real statue resides in Westminster Abbey, but this is an effigy of King Henry III in a glass case. So trying to capture that. And again, I'm just doing my research and just these little oddities again of places that tourists don't normally go to, or very rarely go to. And this is Fournier Street in the East End. There's a particular spot where it's a shop that's been closed for many years, but the people always paste sort of billboards, sort of posters and things like that. So it's ever changing. So I thought that was quite a nice one to capture. This is Jack the Ripper territory, this particular street. And there's a famous pub on the end of it, apparently where he used to drink. And a sculpture into a wall there, St Alban the Martyr Church. Again, just little oddities, down alleyways, doing research. I think this was on the advice of a friend of mine, Jim, who'd seen it. He used to work just around the corner, so on his lunch hour he used to walk past this quite a few times, and he alerted me to it. And luckily there was a bench opposite, so I could sit and sketch this. Probably took about an hour or so. But it's just a very strange sculpture just coming out of a wall. I thought that might be quite nice to capture. And I'm getting into old shop doorways and old pubs that have long since closed down by this point, and I'm dealing with the the detail, the minutiae, if you like, minutiae of all the cables and all the sort of bits and pieces of graffiti and things like that. For some reason, these things really interest me the most. It's great to draw old pub signs and something that's closed down, but it's the things that are left behind by workmen once they've boarded it up, and what happens to these shop doorways over time when they're sort of left to the elements. St Bartholomew entrance, one of the oldest churches. I think I had this in Sketchbook 1 or 2. There's quite a lot of entrance ways. I'm getting sort of fascinated by that at this point in this sketchbook. St Helens in Bishopsgate. So this is literally 500 yards away from the Gherkin. So the difference in architecture just in this little part is amazing. This is Mary Queen of Scots statue on Fleet Street. So if you walk down Fleet Street, if you look up at all the old buildings, there's so much to see. London Troops Memorial. This is opposite the Bank of England in central London. Middle Temple Gardens. I was quite pleased with this one actually. And for some reason, it's not very often I use green. I'm not really sure why. Green's a very strange colour for me. It doesn't often go well with other bright, lighter colours, but for some reason it worked really well with the pink. Outside the National Theatre. Really getting into outside sculptures by this point. This was inside the V&A. So there's a balcony above. You can actually sort of walk down on ground level, but there's a balcony that you can sort of view all the artifacts and all the sculptures and everything. So I was stood there for an hour or so just to capture this. The darker blue is the arch sort of going around, and it's the same arch, and it's just kind of going up and then coming back down. But this bit is so much more further away, so that's why that's in light blue. And again, old shop doorways. And the V&A again, just playing around with background lines on this one, just having a bit of fun. I think it might have been a sketch that I wasn't too happy with, so I just thought, okay, oh well, let's just have some fun with the background at least. Let's try and salvage it and make it something a little bit strange. Sometimes I used to do that. Tipper's tiger, that's a model from, it's a South Indian artifact. And there's a handle on the side that's, I think it's an organ. It's a very strange thing. It was very popular actually in a glass case, trying to capture this, and so many tourists and guided tours would go by at least every 10 minutes. So I think we're coming to the end. In fact, yes, that is the end of that book. And so that was sketchbook number 5. So this really dealt with part 1 of my Italian Grand Tour. So I hope you enjoyed that. So tune in for other ones coming up very soon. Sketchbook number 6 will deal with part 2 of Italy, and a lot more besides. So thanks again.